And hello, welcome to the Saturday Breakdown. Week 3 is in the books. I'm joined here by Clark.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
And he is rocking the Garden City cap today in honor of their win in the Hatchet game, the biggest game of the week probably in Southwest Kansas at least. And we'll talk about the Hatchet game here in just a minute. Mm-hmm. COVID-19 cancellations, of course, hit us a little bit this week, and we'll talk about that as we go through some of the games. And my own personal COVID-19 news, as of today, I am officially cleared and recovered from COVID-19. Yeah. So that feels good. I got to sleep in my own bed last night for the first time in over 2 weeks. That was pretty nice. I'd been sleeping on an air mattress in here in my den, to try and keep from exposing my wife too much. So,
and you guys had an anniversary through all that too. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, absolutely. Had our 30th wedding anniversary in there. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Let's wade right into the scores, and we'll start in the Great Western Athletic Conference. Colby 13, Ulysses 8, a surprisingly close game, or at least surprising to me. And Ulysses will be Liberals' opponent next week in a kind of a last minute development. Hugoton 63, Guyman 13. This game was definitely never in doubt. Hugoton was up 42-0, I believe, at one point. And the final score 63-13, Hugoton over Guyman. I watched some of that one last night, and to be honest with you, I am officially cleared and recovered. Guyman just could not stop the pass, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He threw the ball over him a lot last night. Holcomb 38, Southwestern Heights 12. In another game, a good competitive game, I knew this would be a good game going in. Goodland 23, Lakin 17. So Lakin is 1-2 on the year, but they are a pretty strong 1-2. Their losses are to Goodland and to Stratford, Texas. And in a what I thought was a great outcome, was at one time the head coach at Cimarron, so I love to see the Blue Jays do well. Cimarron upset Scott City last night, 22-13.
Wow.
Big win for the Blue Jays. And their first GWAC win in their third game. So that's also a milestone for the Blue Jays. All right, let's take a look at WAC action. Of course, the big game on the slate in the WAC last night was the Hatchet game. Garden City and Dodge City. There's always a lot of hype around this game. It is a huge rivalry game, and it was a tough game. It was a close game all the way. Garden City pulls out a 14-8 win over Dodge City. And really the key play in the game was a blocked punt recovered for a touchdown by the Buffaloes. So, big game.
They had one called back in the second quarter. It was a scoreless game for quite a while, and just tough football played by both teams. They both looked pretty good, and I was super happy the Buffaloes came out on top on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that is always a huge game for both of those teams. Now, last night was the 82nd or 83rd?
It's been the Hatchet the two teams have played each other since 1903, and I believe the Hatchet started in 1938.
Wow.
So, quite a while.
Been going on for a long time. Absolutely. All right. Other WAC action last night. We had Hayes over Liberal 27-13. And I'll be real honest with you. It was a very competitive game all the way. Hayes jumped up to a lead, and they kept the lead through the whole game, but Liberal hung with them through the whole game. The deciding factor in that game was 5 turnovers by the Redskins and none by the Indians. You change the turnover margin, and that can become a completely different game. So Liberal played well, I felt like, last night. And the last one out of the WAC, McPherson over Great Bend 31-13. Great Bend off to an 0-3 start. All right, the High Plains League. Syracuse continues their winning ways. Syracuse off to a 3-0 start with a 27-0 win over Stanton County last night. Lakin, of course, fell to Goodland, and Southwestern Heights fell to Holcomb. Sublette is the first of the COVID-19 cancellations we're going to talk about today. Sublette had to cancel their game Friday with Sedgwick. Okay. Sedgwick ended up rescheduling with another team, and I believe won that game. And that'll be when we go on to the Kansas scores. We'll see that. But Sublette, Meade, Ness City, those are three games right out here in the area that were canceled due to COVID-19 concerns. Meade not only canceled this week's game, but next week's game as well. And Meade has gone to full remote learning. So Meade experiencing obviously a little bit of an outbreak in their school district. And we hope everybody does well there and that they get through that quickly, in the same way with Sublette. As a matter of fact, from what I heard, the Ness City lacrosse game, it was nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon before Ness City called that game off, or before lacrosse knew it. So, yeah, things are going to be very fluid. People's schedules are going to change quickly. And speaking of those schedule changes, Ulysses Chanute got canceled for next week, and so Liberal was able to pick up Ulysses for next week. So instead of being open next week, Liberal will be at Ulysses. So that's a big pickup there for Liberal. It's going to be nice to have that game. The other possibility was Liberal might have ended up going to Coffeyville. So glad to find we're going to be a little closer to home at Ulysses than we would have been. That's a haul to Coffeyville.
So do you get back on the sideline?
Yeah, absolutely. As of Monday, I'm back coaching, and I'll be back on the sidelines Friday. I'm looking forward to that. It has been bizarre listening to the games on the radio, the last couple of weeks. That's not something I've ever experienced before, and so it's been a little weird, but I'm looking forward to being back coaching again. All right, the last score out of the High Plains League: Elkhart 13 and Conway Springs 58. I knew Conway Springs was a traditional power and that they were probably going to be pretty tough, but Elkhart's off to an 0-3 start. That's their worst start, obviously, in a while. But hopefully the Wildcats will be able to bounce back in the coming weeks. All right, and the Southern Plains Iroquois League: Hodgman County 60, Buckland 14. Meade, of course, canceled their game with Satanta. South Gray 48, Mineola 0. That one surprised me a little bit. Mineola's been pretty tough recently. They've lost 2 in a row now. And it's not that I was surprised that South Gray won. I was more surprised by the margin of victory than by the fact that South Gray won that game. But Spearville 68, Ingalls 22, Kiowa County 6, and South Central 54. Speaking of being a little surprised by the margin of victory, so South Central's got 2 wins this season already. That doubles their win total from last year. So they're doing well as well. We're going to talk a little bit next about some of the Oklahoma and Texas schools in the area and how they did last night, and then we'll move on to the rest of Kansas. But just in those 4 leagues that we cover, try to cover every week, I really was pleased with how competitive many of the games were. There were some blowouts there, especially more in 8-man, and 8-man tends that way a little bit, but I was really pleased with how competitive some of those games were. And some teams are showing some signs of life, I think. Hey, by the way, did you happen to notice, I shared it on Facebook, the score from I think it was Ingalls and, who was it? Ingalls was playing somebody there. It's a junior high game, and the final score was 108-92. That is crazy. I mean, 8-man kind of lends itself to that. Things get a little wild in 8-man at times, but that was a little nuts. Obviously, nobody was playing any defense in that game. All right, let's take a look at the Texas and Oklahoma schools. Perryton has had the COVID-19 bug hit them too, unfortunately. Perryton canceled last night's game with Canadian, and they have canceled next week's game as well. So the Rangers are going to be staying home this week and next week. Hooker last night pulled out a win, 27-9 over Booker, Texas. Buffalo 50, Turpin 0. Balco Forgan 56, Boise City 8. Weatherford 38, Woodward 21. And then moving into Texas, Canyon 40-3 over Borger. Dumas 62-26 over Leveland. Hereford falls to Estacado 41-6. That's Lubbock Estacado for those of you that don't know your Texas teams as well. La Mesa 32, River Road 29. Bushland 35, Stratford 19. The Elks fall to Bushland last night. Dalhart 49, Friota 21. Pampa 73, Denver City 28. West Texas High 42 and Sunray 27. Spearman 49, Vega 7, and Wellington 50 and Groover 6. So that kind of takes a look at the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle schools here in the area. Now on to the rest of Kansas. There were some big games in the state last night. And two area schools that I haven't mentioned yet, six-man. Rolla got a big win last night, 54-6 over Pawnee Heights. So Rolla equals their win total from last year already this season, and Moscow big over Burton, 55-7 over Burton. Clark, you ever seen any six-man games? I'm not hearing you there, to be honest with you. You might check your...
How about now?
There we go. Now I got you.
It's been a long while since I've seen six-man go, yeah. But some of the play design ups for six-man are absolutely unreal. I love watching it when I can.
Yeah, I think anybody that has never seen six-man, the first thing probably is you can't run the ball until there's been an exchange, right?
Right.
So the guy that you snap the ball to, the quarterback, he can't run the ball. There's got to be an exchange before you can run the ball. That's the most obvious, to me, the most obvious rule difference right off the bat. But yeah, six-man is something else. It's if anything, an even more wide open game than eight-man. And eight-man's a pretty wide open game. Mm-hmm. So those were our two six-man games. All right, now, before we start with the Kansas scores, I'd like to point out one thing, and that is Bueller won last night, and for their coach Steve Warner, who's a former Liberal coach, that was his 250th win. So
congratulations!
That's a big total. That basically points out two things about Steve Warner. Number one, he's getting old. And number two, he's been pretty successful in his years of coaching. He's got 250 wins and one state title in that time now.
Wow. And
that state title came at Bueller 2 years ago, I believe. Okay. All right. A couple of big games last night. Hutch and number 5 ranked Maize South, and Hutch pulls out the 1-point win, 34-33 over Maize South. Hutch is off to a 3-0 start. Yeah. And Hutch looking better than they have in a couple of years. So another one, too, that was a big game to me, Mill Valley, who has been so far the dominant team in the state of Kansas this season. Mill Valley fell to Bentonville, Arkansas last night, 35-28. So a big game there for Mill Valley, and unfortunately they did not get by Bentonville, Arkansas. And another one last night, again, two traditional powers in two different classifications. Aquinas 41-35 over Miege. So St. Thomas Aquinas 31, Bishop Miege 35. All right, now let's just kind of do a rundown of some other Kansas scores of note. Blue Valley Northwest 24 over Blue Valley 17. Blue Valley North 42 over Blue Valley Southwest 21. Cape and Mount Carmel 56, Emporia 13. In one that a lot of people saw as one of the games of the week in the state, Hoisington 32, Halstead 22. That was Hoisington's first win over Halstead in a while. Silver Lake 29 over Riley County 28, another squeaker of a game. Frontenac 28, Colgan 7. TMP 20, Plainville 13. Lawrence 42, Olathe West 14. In another one of those big games in the state last night too, among two of the better teams in the state, Derby 35, Bishop Carroll 21.
Just hammered him.
Yeah, that's I'll be honest with you, after Derby's loss to Mill Valley, is that right? Yeah. And then Derby playing close against Newton, I was thinking Derby might not be as strong as they have been, but they bounced back against Carroll and get a big win against the Eagles there. And Newton looks surprisingly strong again. So Newton obviously is better than I was expecting him to be. So, yeah, Newton looked good last night, too. As a matter of fact,
they lost against Mays 34-27, I think it was.
Yeah, 34-27, but it was a competitive game all the way. It was a back and forth game all the way. So, yeah. And there's our next score is, Newton 27, Mays 34. Let's see, where am I on the list? Here we go. Centralia 30, Jackson Heights 12. Piper, again, playing all their games on the road this year, 39, Leavenworth 14. And, yeah, there's the Newton-Mays score, Newton 27, Mays 34. Olathe North 35, Free State 9. Olathe Northwest 21, Olathe East 26. And an 8-man game that is kind of note here, Golden Plains 62, Greeley County 28. I'm sure that's got to be Golden Plains' first win over Greeley County in a long time. So that was one of the reasons why I picked that one up. That's a big win there for Golden Plains. Yeah. So, Ken, any other games you want to talk about? Any?
Lakin fell to Goodland 17-23. I think he hit the rest of them. The Salt Hawks with their squeaker of a win. 1 point. That was they've always growing up, they were the dominant school in Kansas. So
and then they've been a little down for a couple of seasons, but it looks like they're bouncing back. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
Pretty exciting stuff out there right now. Oakley beat Ellis Saline County 34-7.
That's a big win for the Plainsmen. Yeah.
Norton's looking pretty good. They won 34-28 against Russell.
Hey, I saw a picture pregame there. Russell's field is beautiful.
It is.
I think I don't know how new it is, but they've really made some improvements to that field in recent years. I was really surprised to see that field looking the way it is. It's a turf field. They've done improvements not only to the surface of the field but also to the stadium itself. Yeah, I was really impressed when I saw that picture. It was a pregame picture tweeted out by either Norton or Russell. I'm not sure which, but yeah, I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's talk a little bit about picks. Last week I was 12-3 in picks. I thought was surprisingly good. I figured I was really going to embarrass myself when I started making picks. This week I came a little closer to embarrassing myself. This week I think I missed 4 of them. I think I ended up 10-4 this week. No, I missed 5, 10-5 this week.
Wow.
So, I did not do quite as well this week. Now, a couple of those I was glad to miss. I thought Scott City would probably beat Cimarron, although I knew it would be a really good game. To me, that was one that could have gone either way. I was glad to see Cimarron win that game as a former Blue Jay. And I'm still struggling to pick the 8-man games, to be honest with you. Eight-man is,
it's tough.
And it's not even that it's so unpredictable as much as it is I'm just not as familiar with those programs, as I was a few years ago, All right, so let's take a look at next week's picks. Okay, here are next week's matchups. We've got 3-0 Hayes at 1-2 Garden City. And, everybody's picking Hayes, but I'm going to go out on a limb and pick Garden City in that game. And we'll see how that one goes. I think Garden City is stronger than most people realize. And, I may be picking with my heart more than my head, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Garden City in that matchup.
That's a good pick.
We've got 1-2 Dodge City at Bishop Carroll. Yeah, I think Carroll's probably gonna win that one. Again, I don't pick Liberal games, but Kent, if you want to make a pick, you can. We've got 0-3 Liberal at 0-3 Ulysses next week too.
Oh man, that one's going to be. I think that's actually going to be a pretty good game. If you can watch that one online, I definitely would. Both programs are starting to come along a little bit. Coaches are starting to come back after some Corona scares and things like that. So I think Liberals are probably a little bit better than what they've shown. I would go with them. I think this is going to be their week to bounce back and get some things lined out and get a win there.
One thing I will say about Ulysses, after not looking particularly good in the first 2 weeks, they bounced back and played Colby tight this week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, showing a little bit of strength there. And the other WAC game is Great Bend at Cape and Mount Carmel. And that's 0-3 Great Bend at 2-1 Cape and Mount Carmel. I'm definitely going to have to go with Cape and Mount Carmel there. Those they're the Crusaders, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Crusaders? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The High Plains League. You've got 3-0 Syracuse at 2-1 TMP. I'll be honest with you, I'm not real sure what TMP's got this year, but Syracuse is off to a strong start, so I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to, and pick Syracuse over TMP. We've got 1-2 Lakin versus 1-2 Ellis. Again, I think Lakin's losses have been good losses. As weird as that is, I know that's a term you don't use together very often, but Lakin's losses have been good losses. So I'm going to pick Lakin. Yeah, I'm going to pick Lakin over Ellis. 1-2 Southwestern Heights at 1-2 Cimarron. I think Cimarron ought to be able to get by Southwestern Heights, although I will tell you, that is a pretty big rivalry game, bigger than most people realize. It's kind of a quiet rivalry game because those two are old. Now, we're talking about back into the 70s and 80s. Those are two old Iroquois League teams, and they still hate each other from the old Iroquois League days, I know when I got to Cimarron, and they have been in the High Plains League at that time. Cimarron had been in the High Plains League for, nearly 20 years. They came into the High Plains League in the early 80s. Cimarron, Meade, and Southwestern Heights all came into the High Plains League together at the same time in the early 80s because the rest of the Iroquois League was playing 8-man, and those were the 11-man teams left in the Iroquois League. Mm-hmm. That was probably 83, I think, was their first season in the High Plains League. Leota also came in from the Northwest Kansas League that same year. And so, when I went to Cimarron in 2000, they had been in the High Plains League for a long time, 16 years. Mm-hmm. But still, what they saw as their big rivals were those old Iroquois League rivalries, Meade and Southwestern Heights. They did not like Meade and Southwestern Heights. And those were big games for them, Meade and Southwestern Heights. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, that Cimarron Heights game still, even though they're not in the same league anymore, I'm sure it is still going to be a rivalry game. All right, the next one out of the High Plains League that I don't know whether it will be played or not. It has not been canceled yet, and that is Sublette versus Whitewater Remington. Sublette canceled their game with Sedgwick this week. So far, they're still on for next week. We'll just have to kind of see how that develops. And I'm picking Whitewater Remington in that game if it happens. The next one from the High Plains League is 0-3 Elkhart versus 0-3 Wichita Independent. I don't know much about Wichita Independent, okay? I really don't. I know they're 0-3. I'm guessing that they have probably played a little stiffer competition than Elkhart, but I don't know about that. Elkhart's played Conway Springs. Elkhart's played some pretty good competition, and I'm a little torn on this one, but it's being played at Elkhart, and I'll guarantee you Wichita Independent is not used to having to drive as far as they're going to have to drive out to Elkhart. For that reason, I'm going to pick the Wildcats in that game. Stanton County 0-3 versus 3-0 Sedgwick. Sedgwick looks like a good team. I don't think they're going to have much trouble with Stanton County. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't think Sedgwick will have too much trouble with Stanton County. All right, that brings us to the Great West Athletic Conference. 3-0 Colby at 1-2 Smoky Valley. I think Colby will continue winning in that game. I think they ought to win that one. 3-0 Holcomb at 0-3 Nickerson. I don't think Holcomb should have much trouble with Nickerson. Here's a good one. Ought to be a great matchup. To me, probably could go either way. We've got 2-1 Goodland at 1-2 Scott City. Even though Scott City is 1-2, Scott City's losses have been to Holcomb and Cimarron. I think Scott City probably will win that game, although I think and hope that it will be a good game. The next GWAC matchup there has Hugoton, 2-1 Hugoton at 3-0 Cheney. Hugoton has looked really good the last couple of weeks. They got a big win over Ulysses and a big win over Guyman, both of those local rivals. I just don't think Hugoton's probably got enough firepower for Cheney from what I've seen. Cheney looks pretty strong this year, so I'm going to pick Cheney in that game. And 1-2 Cimarron versus 1-2 Southwestern Heights. We've already talked about that. I think Cimarron will beat Heights. Now on to the Iroquois League, South Plains Iroquois Association. 3-0 Hodgman County versus 3-0 Leota. That's probably for our area the 8-man game of the week this coming week. Hodgman County, I think, probably is strong enough to get by Leota, but so I'm going to pick Hodgman County, but I think that could potentially be a really good game.
Yeah.
And that's another one of those guys, if you're looking for something to watch Friday and it's streaming, I don't know if it is, but if you search the two schools, there's a good chance it is. 8-man ball, if you don't watch much of it, it's a lot of fun. It really is. It is in some ways a more entertaining game than 11-man ball. Or at least a little more action-packed might be a better way to put it. A little more wide-open game. All right, 3-0 South Gray versus 1-1 Ness City. Even though Ness City's 1-1, to me, this game could go either way. Ness City's, their only loss is a 1-point loss to Hill City. At the same time, Ness City canceled Friday.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee that they're going to play this game against South Gray. So I will pick South Gray if the game is played, but I think that has the potential to be a really good game. We've got 3-0 Spearville at 0-3 Stockton. You have to have a long memory for Stockton, but if you remember back into the late 80s and early 90s, Stockton was winning state championships left and right. They've fallen on hard times in recent years. I think there's probably Spearville's not going to have much trouble against Stockton there, so Spearville ought to win that game. But we've got 1-2 Buckland at 1-2 South Central. I'm going to pick Buckland in that game. 1-2 Mineola at 0-3 Ingalls. I'm going to pick Mineola for the third week in a row, which is probably the kiss of death. I picked them the last 2 weeks, and they've lost both of the last 2 weeks. They probably wish I'd picked somebody else, but I'm sticking with Mineola. And 0-2 Satanta at 1-1 Dighton. I think Dighton probably ought to win that game. And the last game is 0-3 Kiowa County at 2-1 Kinsley. And Kinsley's off to a good start. I don't know what Kinsley's done in the last couple of years, but it seems like the last time I actually was aware of how Kinsley was doing, they were not doing real well. So good to see the Coyotes off to a 2-1 start. And I think Kinsley ought to probably be able to get by Kiowa County. So those are the picks for this week from our local leagues.
So with the high school, I think it's too early to really tell yet who's going to be where. But
here's what I'm going to say: I would not be surprised if we don't, especially at the 3-2-1A level, I wouldn't be totally amazed if we don't see a change in the playoff format. So I think even that may not be set in stone.
Yeah.
If we have schools that are still having to cancel games because of COVID-19 as we get into district play, I think we could see 3-2-1A go to a format much like 4-5-6A, where everyone makes the playoffs. They find some way to break them up into playoff pairings, and everybody's in the first round of the playoffs in week 9. Because let me tell you, when you have district games and you have to cancel a district game, that has to go down as a forfeit.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because of the point system, and this is something most people don't know, and I know because I experienced it as a coach one year. With the point system, if you forfeit one district game, you officially forfeit all of your district games.
Really?
Okay?
Wow.
Yeah. And that's where they're going to run into a problem. Okay. And the reason they do that is because of the point system. It's the only way to make the points fair. So that then if you forfeit one district game, that's a 1-0 loss is how it goes in the books. So then to make sure that all of your future opponents only have a chance to get 1 point from your game, then you end up forfeiting all of your district games. And that's the way the district structure works. And most people don't realize that. So because of that, I think if we have several COVID-19 cancellations going into district play, it may force the state's hand to kind of reformat the playoffs on the fly in 3-2-1A. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying I see a potential for problems there if we start having COVID cancellations in those district games. And I could see where the state might decide that, hey, the fairest thing for us to do is to step in and do something, just for this year. And so it would not amaze me to see the state step in and change the playoff format for 3-2-1A.
And even further down, when we hit the playoffs, a cancellation then, due to COVID,
Yeah.
what would that look like, and how would they bounce back from that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's something I'll guarantee you that this is going to have an impact on the playoffs at some point this season, either through cancellations in district or even actual cancellations once the playoffs start. I'll guarantee you COVID-19 is still going to have an impact on the playoff picture in the state of Kansas. It's just, going to kind of remain to see what that is. I'll guarantee one thing about it we've already seen, and I've talked about it every week. We've and this week especially, we saw just how fluid these schedules can be. You've got kids or you've got schools that are rescheduling games sometimes Wednesday or Thursday. They're just getting a Friday game picked up. They're literally rescheduling on the fly.
Well, that happened to Liberal, right? You guys
absolutely
weren't going to play next week, and now you have a game, right?
Exactly. We weren't going to play, and then we thought we were going to play Coffeyville, and then we picked up Ulysses like Wednesday or Thursday, because they'd lost a game against Chanute. So everybody is rescheduling on the fly. But it's going to be a crazy year. We're only a third of the way through it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a crazy one. That's pretty much it for this week. You got anything else you want to say, Kent?
Well, I've got some predictions I want to put up against you.
Okay.
How likely are they to repeat in the state championship? So Derby was a 6A champion last year. How likely do you think they are to repeat this year?
Well, like I said, Derby hasn't looked as strong as I have expected them to at times, but they bounced back and looked awful good against Carroll this week. And I don't see off the top of my head who's going to challenge them in 6A right now, So I think they've got a legitimate chance to repeat. I would have to really go through and look at it game by game. I know there are some strong teams in 6A, but I'm probably more aware, probably because Liberal's playing in 5A, I'm probably more aware of the strength in 5A than I am in 6A.
So Mill Valley, they were 5A last year. How likely are they to repeat?
I'd say Mill Valley right now looks like they're they're pretty darn likely to repeat, or at least to be there at the end.
Now,
I think
Hayes is a 5A school, right?
Hayes is a 5A school also this year. Yeah. Although, they've bounced down to 4A at times. And, but yeah, they're a 5A school right now. And so, yeah, Hayes looks good in 5A. Mays South looks strong in 5A, although they lost to Hutch. I can't remember if Hutch is 5A or 6A in this cycle. They've been one that's bounced back and forth.
Right.
I think they're 6A right now.
Yeah.
And so, Hutch is looking good in 6A. And I'm sure some of those Olathe schools and, Olathe schools, Blue Valley schools, some of those are going to be 6A schools. And I'm sure, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm just off the top of my head, I'm not aware of which of those schools are 6A and which of them are 5A. I need to really look at a bracket. I can pull that up on K-Preps and look at it, but that's what I need to do. I just need to pull up a bracket. My problem is I'm real aware of the western half of the state, but not so aware of the eastern half of the state. And so, yeah, I'd have to kind of look at those.
It's hard to make those predictions, but just wanted to pick your brain a little bit and see where you were at so far in the season with 6A and 5A. 6-man, bouncing way down. Moscow still looks pretty. They won last year, and they still look pretty good. And I think,
yeah, they do. And that's the thing. Those little schools, they have what gives them an element of unpredictability is that when you're talking about 6-man or even 8-man, 1 or 2 players can make a huge difference.
Correct.
And so, number one, injuries are more likely to sidetrack a team. But number two, from year to year, graduation, teams' talent levels can fluctuate wildly from year to year with the graduation of 1 or 2 really good players,
Yeah.
And Moscow doesn't look to have graduated that many, I mean, they still look good this year.
Yes, they do.
It doesn't look like they graduated all their talent last year, is what I'm saying. So, yeah, Moscow still looks good this year. Now, there are more schools playing 6-man this year, but I'm not sure how many. I think it's still a relatively small number. I think still less than 30 actually playing 6-man ball, but it's growing. My guess is that within the next 3 or 4 years, we'll probably see 6-man recognized and sanctioned by the State Activities Association. Right now, they're still their own association. There's a 6-man football association, and they sanction their own games and everything like that.
Gotcha.
But I do think in the next 3 or 4 years, we'll see them move to a full CASHA sanctioned.
I don't remember 6-man being around.
It's only been around just a few years in Kansas, 4 or 5 years, I think. Basically what happened was some of those old traditional 8-man schools were getting to the point where they were struggling even to field an 8-man team. And some of those were schools that had been traditional powerhouses in 8-man, Ashland and, schools like that. And there were some of them that were struggling to field an 8-man team. And then there were other schools that had not fielded 8-man teams for years, like Ransom Western Plains would be another example. And some of those schools finally here about 4 or 5 years ago just kind of banded together and said, hey, you know what? Our kids need to be doing something.
Sure.
And so they just kind of together created the idea of playing 6-man ball in Kansas. 6-man ball is very popular in the state of Texas. There is no 8-man ball. A lot of people don't realize this. There's no 8-man in Texas. You either play 11-man or 6-man in Texas.
Wow.
Okay. And so a lot of the innovation in 6-man, they're not the only state that plays it, but a lot of the innovation in 6-man comes out of Texas. And I think that's whose rules they adopted. But basically they just looked at the 6-man rules in Texas and thought, hey, we could play some 6-man. There have been some Colorado schools that have played some 6-man, and that first couple of years that schools played it, a lot of those schools in the west edge of Kansas were playing Colorado schools, and it just kind of grew from there. And so now they have their own association. They have a great event in Dodge City at the end of their season. They play They have 2 games back to back. One's for the 3rd and 4th place, and the other one's for 1st and 2nd place. And it's they call it like the West Kansas Shootout or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but it's a pretty cool event. You can either go see it live or they carry it on YouTube live. So it's kind of a cool thing. It's one of those things everybody ought to watch, and I'd encourage you to go in person and watch it there in Dodge City. If you're not doing anything else that weekend, and it's usually a week or 2 before the state championships for everybody else. I think maybe it's the weekend before Thanksgiving that they play that. But if not, it might be the weekend before that. It's somewhere there in the middle of November, but yeah, it's something that it's fun to watch. I'd encourage everybody that gets a chance to go watch it. I think we got another good week coming up. I'm looking forward to getting back into coaching. I'm sure I'm sure I'll be worn out right at first. That's the one thing I've been warned from people that have had this is that, it's just, you get tired really easy after you've recovered and everything. And so we'll see how that goes this week, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to a great week of football in the area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Wish all the teams the best of luck. The ones that have been struggling with COVID issues, we wish you a speedy recovery and, a quick return to play. I do, again, want to iterate, that I think it's great that Kansas is playing. You hate to see the teams that are having outbreaks and having to schedule games, but at the same time, looks like most of the state so far is doing all right as far as keeping healthy. And so that's great to see. And we wish everybody luck, and we wish everybody stays healthy in the coming week. And we'll see you Wednesday.
Yes.
Or in the free zone with Norm. And then we'll see you next Saturday for the Saturday Breakdown. Everybody have a great week.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think and I thought it, that's different. I said what I said and I meant it, or lamented. Words given weight without thought in a person, the way that I talk and the way that I ought to be able to pause and to say that the ball can be placed on my arm, to display for assault, to disgrace in his arm. Pray for the day they could wait for the calm. You can't control the storm, only weather it, whether it's 5 weeks and 5 days of rain sideways, or scorched earth, search for death or water left with all the thorns, with the pedal